All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the October 15th, 2024 El Dorado Irrigation District board meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Directors Osborne, Dwyer, Day, Veerkamp, and Anzini present. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Polson, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the adoption of the agenda? We will get to each item as we go through the meeting, but this is just for the actual adoption of the agenda.
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's agenda, please refer to page 2 for detailed instructions. President Day, does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the adoption of today's agenda. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Jim, do we have any employee recognition this morning?
Yes, good morning. We had a district customer from Scott is his name, expressing appreciation for the outstanding assistance provided by Seth Barbara, Chief Construction and Maintenance Worker, Don Holland, Distribution Operator, and Joel Beal, Distribution Operator. Scott commended their professionalism, politeness, knowledge, and effective communication skills. So it's just one more example of providing excellent service to our customers. That concludes my report.
All right, excellent, thank you. Is there any public comment on items not on today's agenda related to EID?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
All right, thank you. Now we'll come back. Jim, any reports?
Just one. We added a second or third tour at our treatment plants, and Dan and team did a great job again. I think, about 35 customers out there, the last one? Last 20 in the last one, so almost 100 customers going through the treatment plant. So it's an outstanding turnout for that, and I want to thank Dan and his staff. The feedback I get is most customers were impressed with the quality of our employees, which is really nice to see. Oh, yeah, and Karen Cross also helped a lot in coordinating that. So concludes my.
Thank you to everybody that does that. It's neat to see that kind of interest. That's awesome. All right, George, do you have anything?
Yes, there was a little article in the Mountain Democrat. I was overwhelmed, and a lot of people called and said, congratulations on your second retirement. But anyway, I want to appreciate Dawn Hodson's for writing that. And it was a little more explanatory than I thought it was going to be, but thank you. What's that? True. Most of it.
Thank you. Pat?
Yes, thank you. I did attend the El Dorado Water Agency meeting last Wednesday. One of the important things on the agenda was the Water Resources Management Plan, and it was approved to go forward. Within that plan was authorization for feasibility study for a lot of stuff, but one of the specific things was the Alder Creek Reservoir. And I just made it very clear that while we support the studies and securing more water for the county, we were very concerned about our superior water rights and the impact that that project could have on our existing infrastructure. So I tried to convey that to the group. I think they got it. We'll see.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we held a very quick LAFCO meeting on September 25th. Don, you weren't here last time, but I made note that you were back on LAFCO as the alternate member, so thank you for your service. And our next LAFCO meeting is December 4th.
Laurie?
Nothing to report.
All right, thank you. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on items on today's consent calendar?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of today's consent calendar, moved by Director Veerkamp and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, we will be working on item 4 now, our workshop item, operating budget. Ms. Vandy?
Good morning, President Day, members of the board. I'm Jamie Bandy, Director of Finance. I'm here this morning to present our 2025-26 operating budget and 5-year financial plan. Next slide. Okay, so just some previous board action. So the district does recognize a multi-year operating budget process, which was adopted by the board back in 2000. And most recently, the board adopted the 2024 mid-cycle operating budget last December. It's the 23-24 mid-cycle, so it was the 24 budget.
Previous action says March 20th, 2000.
2000 is when the board adopted the 2-year process. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so this morning we'll be looking at our 2024 revised year-end projections. We'll take a look at our revenue and expense projections for 25 and 26. We'll review our debt service coverage, and we will follow up at the end with our 5-year forecast. Okay, moving to our 2024 year-end projections. So 24 estimates for the year-end have come in significantly higher than what we originally budgeted for in 2024. Revenues are estimated to be about $7.5 million more. As you can see on the screen, some of the major contributors include our FCCs, our property tax, our hydroelectric revenue, as well as our investment income and some grant revenue that we received this year. Okay, looking at projections for next year, we have our FCC revenue. We are estimating to be about $1 million higher than we budgeted in 2024, primarily due to the recent adoption of the FCC rate increases. We're also projecting about $2 million higher in property taxes. And then in the budget proposed today for 25 and 26, you'll see grant funding that's been included. Primarily the $10 million that we received from DWR for the Sly Park Intertie project. $9 million of that is budgeted in 2025, and then the remaining balance is budgeted in the second year in 2026. The graph before you is just looking at our revenues again year over year. So it is the 2024 originally adopted budget, our year-end projections, and then looking at our proposed 25 and 26 budget. So overall, the total district revenues for 2025, we're proposing $127 million for 2025, and then just a slight increase above that for 2026. And again, as you'll notice, the largest increase in 25 is that grant funding that's been included in here. Yes.
It kind of gives the appearance that our budget is stable for those 2 years because it pops up in 25 with the 9 million and then that comes out in 26, but the rate increase offsets that reduction.
Correct. If you look at the utility rates, the rate revenue for those years, it's a steady increase in each years, but again, for the total district, it's really the grant revenue that impacts that and makes it look almost flat. All right, now we'll take a look at essentially our budget development process. So the next slide, please, Jen. The numbers that we're looking at today for the year-end projections are based on actuals taken as of September 10th, and then really looking ahead to the end of the year, annualizing those, any adjustments and estimates for the year-end at the time. And then looking ahead at our 25 and 26 proposed budget, the 2025 proposed budget is 9% higher than the 24 adopted budget, and we'll look at that into some more detail in just a couple of slides. That 9% is approximately $6 million. And then for 2026, the proposed budget is 3% higher than that of the 25 proposed budget. Okay, next slide. So first, we'll take a look at personnel. So the increase overall to our expenses, the largest increase is primarily on the personnel side, specifically with our benefits. So the net personnel expenses increased by about $4.5 million. Contributors to this increase include decreases to both our gross wages and our capitalized labor offset. Our Hanson project that's nearing completion, a lot of the IT staff time was dedicated to that for the capitalized labor offset, so that's not included for next year. And then looking at our benefits, the benefit increase of about $3 million, like I said, is really the largest increase to this section. The employer PERS contribution increased by about $1.5 million. Our medical has increased about $750,000, and the retiree health continues to increase as well, this year looking at about $620,000. Now looking on the materials and services side, the increase here is about 5%, so $1.5 million. Again, just some of the items listed that contribute to this, and as we've kind of seen in the past and what continues to remain pretty steady is really those utility rates, or PG&E costs are increasing about $1.5 million. And again, really the largest contributor to that increase. So again, just looking at the chart overall comparing year over year, you'll see at the top portion shows
Excuse
our...
me.
Yes.
I would ask a question. Could you go back to the last slide?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to point out that the biggest increase there is our utilities increase. When you say that the materials and supplies are increased by 5%, the biggest portion is utilities.
Utilities, yes.
Okay.
And that's PG&E.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so looking at our chart, the top portion shows our net personnel expenses, so our wages and our benefits. The bottom portion just shows the breakout of the materials and supplies. And again, the total operating expenses for 2025 proposed budget is about $71 million. Again, that's about 9% higher than the 24 budgeted. And then our 2026 budgeted amount of $73 million is 3% higher than 25. This slide here is just further breaks down the benefit expenses. And so again, you can see that our PERS contributions as well as our retiree health are really the largest increases to this section. And it looks like our proposed 25 budget of about 15 million is 20% higher than that for the 24 budgeted. Okay, now we'll review our debt service coverage. So again, this chart here, we're looking at year over year, our adopted for 24 year-end projections, as well as our proposed 25 and 26 budgets. The debt service coverage ratio consists of a calculation of our net revenues divided by our debt service payments. So as you can see for 2025 proposed budget, the debt service ratio is 2.39. That includes the net revenues divided by our senior debt service. If you look at the last line, the internal debt service ratio, this is sort of what we call our all-in ratio, and so it also includes our subordinate debt coverage, which you see decreases that ratio slightly down to 1.94. On this graph here, I do want to point out that 2025 and 2026 debt service does include the anticipated debt prepayments that the district has made in recent years. Okay, so now we'll take a look at our financial plan. I wanted to share briefly that S&P Global Ratings recently reaffirmed the district's AA- credit rating, which they do view as stable. They highlighted several positive factors about the district, including its ample water supply, our strong financial performance, our overall rate affordability, and the planned rate increases through 2028. They also acknowledge that the district's diverse sources of revenues, in addition to our regular rate revenue, we also include our property tax revenue as well as our hydroelectric. One thing that the S&P did caution the district that rating could be lowered at any time if our liquidity deteriorates significantly, or if that all-in debt service coverage falls short of projections. We'll take a look again in just a few slides in more detail, but the debt service coverage ratios do decline a little bit in 25 and 26. But the proposed budget that we're showing today does account for these concerns and reflects recommendations for maintaining strong credit metrics, including the liquidity and the debt service coverage ratio over time. So again, just kind of looking at an overview of what our financial plan objectives are. Again, we need to generate adequate revenues to fund our operating costs, pay our debt service, meet our debt covenants, as well as maintain adequate reserves. We look at it to maintain at minimum current service and reliability levels for ratepayers. We want to avoid that customer rate shock when we do have to increase rates. We want to maintain strong credit ratings, maintain our CIP funding levels, as well as maintain strong debt coverage ratios. So looking at the revenue side of the financial plan, again, just kind of highlighting the rates. The implementation of our rates helps us produce funds for, the district. We discuss at almost every board meeting the need for our replacement of our aging infrastructure that we've seen recently in the CIP, and we'll see a little bit later this morning. We do need to maintain our debt coverage as required by our bond covenants, and then we also need to maintain our operating reserves that have been approved by the board. Also in the financial plan on the expense side, 2025, again, is an increase of about 9% over the 24 budgeted year. And then years 26 through 29, we've estimated a 3% cost inflation for those years on the expense side. Okay, looking at our debt, the proposed plan does include a future bond issuance currently estimated at $120 million. Again, this is primarily looking at to be used for our Silver Lake Dam replacement project as well as our water treatment plant improvements. And then one thing I do just want to point out here on the 25 through 29 five-year financial plan, it does already have accounted for the $70 million debt issuance that we are looking to do this year in '24. So those numbers are included. Okay, so this slide just looks at our existing outstanding debt. So this does not include the '24 issuance or any future issuances. This, however, is the projected debt outstanding. So again, in 2024, this does include the $70 million. And for purposes of this graph, the future bond issuance of $120 million is reflected in year 2027. And then what does all of that mean? Looking at our annual debt payments, as you can see here, the different colors represent the blue bars are our senior debt. The red is our subordinate debt. And then the green and the purple are those future, the 2024 and the 2027 bonds. And so again, this is the annual debt payment service that we will make each year on the outstanding debt. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the 5-year forecast. We have a few slides. The first one will show the total district. So again, on here, we're kind of looking at our net revenues, our total debt service payments. It shows our cash balances, both at the beginning and at the end of the years. We've included in here our total CIP, and that is in coordination with the CIP plan that's been presented to the board and will be presented again later this morning. And this also includes our senior debt coverage as well as our all-in debt coverage. The next two slides just show the same information but broken out by utility. So this first slide here is the water only, and then we have the wastewater only. And then I've included an additional slide this year for some informational purposes. So for budgeting purposes, the district considers additional factors that are not considered for other financial purposes. My example in this case is our credit ratings. So the two items that are included in this budget are the addition of the grant revenue, as well as the debt service prepayments. So when the credit rating companies are looking at our financials, they don't include that information. And so what I wanted to show us here is if that grant funding, so in 2025, the $9 million, if we exclude that from our revenues, and we also exclude the $6 million prepayment for the debt, that shows a different debt service coverage. And so those are the highlighted lines. This is what S&P looked at and the information that they looked at to reaffirm our credit rating. And so I kind of just wanted to point that out, since when we're looking at budgeted numbers, they look slightly different. Are there any questions on that before we finish up? No? Okay. Well, that concludes the formal presentation, and this is just an information item only, so no action is required, but I am available for any questions.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Is there any public comment or question relating to this information item, to our operating budget?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on workshop item number 4.
All right, thank you. That was just an information item. There will be no vote. And now we'll move to action item number 5. Mr. Money?
Good morning, John Money, Director of Engineering. This morning we are going to review the 2025 to 2029 Capital Improvement Plan for consideration for adoption by the board. So again, the CIP or Capital Improvement Plan is presented on an annual basis. It was last approved by the board last October. And then this year's draft workshop was presented by Brian Mueller at our last meeting in September. So again, it's a 5-year plan, but we do revise and revisit this annually. As our finance director just said, that these numbers are rolled up into the planned operating budget, which will be presented for adoption at the next board meeting. There were 2 minor changes since Brian presented this in the September 23rd workshop, which added about $1 million into the planned CIP. Those were related to the Marina Village number 1. We call it project consolidation, and our Flume 48 replacement project following the award of a hazard mitigation grant from FEMA. So I'll go over those when we get to those slides in a bit. So again, the proposed CIP is really spread across seven different funding mechanisms, from FERC, our FERC licensing requirements, to our different water, wastewater funds, and general district. You can see the spread over each of the 5 years at the bottom as they're totaled. You do see a bit of a spike in numbers there in 2027 and 2028. And that is when we anticipate both the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant project and the Silver Lake Dam Replacement Project both going into construction. So 2 of our kind of larger planned CIP expenditures hitting in around 2027. So again, getting back to the small changes, and these are some of the larger projects we have in our CIP moving forward. Marina Village 1 force main, we previously had budgeted for some replacement of our or variable frequency drives, or VFDs, at that site. We had a break on this, or a leak last year, and so we were trying to kind of do best practices on how we could postpone the life of this. So we had samples taken out and some forensics performed on those, again, trying to help extend the life. So the VFD initial hope was that we could feather the flows in this to avoid any of the ongoing surges as the pumps cycle at that site. Given the severity of this last leak, we had decided to scrap that for now and just move forward with replacement of the entire force main. So that design will be going out here shortly. We're going to accelerate all the design funds for those 2 projects into just design of the replacement of the force main. And unfortunately, because that project has kind of crept up due to the severity or the importance of getting that force main looked at, we have not developed construction costs, so they are not currently included in the CIP.
When we're talking about most recent leaks, we're talking about 2 weeks ago, and then maybe 6 weeks ago, when there was a water line break on Green Valley.
No, so this
And then,
is,
I mean, like Green Valley into Marina area, going up the hill there was. Do they all
so they're-
have something
they are-
to do with each other?
they do not. Well, they do, in that it's all
Shifting.
older infrastructure that's aged is kind of the main driver, we believe, behind the force main break. So, I mean, if you really want to get into the details of it, what it is it's cyclical. The pumps turn on at this. It's a very high head force main, and they just turn on and on. They've done that for the last 30 or 40 years since this pipeline has been in use. And that just fatigues the pipe over that time. And that again, we did forensics initially, and that was indicated in that is that the pipe is getting fatigued. And at this point, we just don't think we can wait any longer before. We don't think we can mitigate that fatigue. It really needs replacement at this point.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, next slide, please. So the other funds that we added in were in relation to our Flume 48 replacement project. Again, this is a pretty good success story for the district. We were awarded almost $800,000 for a design contract, so we'll be pursuing that this year. if all things, if we can capitalize on that, there's up to about 6.6 million estimated for construction funding, which will come through the same funding source through FEMA. So again, the project is on the books for about 9.6 million. Of that, we believe we can get about 7.4 million in total grant reimbursement from FEMA, which is a real win. Which again required an additional funding, matching funds for the district, but we think that's well worth it. I didn't update this. Again, just following up on that same kind of mode of success, our Flume 45 Section 3, this was already included in the draft CIP, but a similar story where we anticipate about 9.2 million in construction. The percent reimbursement is not quite as high on this, but we're still anticipating about 6.6 million in total reimbursements from FEMA on this. It is a separate program, so the Flume 48 is under what they call BRIC, which is Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. This is the BRIC. The Flume 48 is a hazard mitigation grant. So we're again pursuing both arms out of FEMA. Moving on. Again, our Slide Park Intertie is currently under construction. That is on the books for about 50 million, of which 10 million of that is also supported under grant funds. So we're really looking at about 40 million for that project in the CIP. Our El Dorado Hills water treatment plant, we just had our kickoff with our design consultant this last week. So we are looking again at about 2 years of pretty intensive design on that project, and then going to the construction in 2027. Total improvements on that project, again, about, I put 100 million, I think on the CIP it's 99 million. So rounding up. Silver Lake Dam, again, is a FERC requirement. We are going to be replacing that late 1800s timber crib dam with a new concrete structure. And so you can see that original dam up there, again, that we love to show in that top left picture, and the replacement under the 60% design in that bottom right. George?
We have yet to receive a violation from the state water dam safety people, but how close are we to that? Do you any idea?
That is probably more of a question for our dam safety engineer, John Kessler, but I don't believe we're in violation at this point. Again, we are making really good progress actually on the design portion of this project. We anticipate on having it go to FEMA review this upcoming year, which is also a benefit for us, because once FEMA, so some of the grant programs that are associated with this are contingent on FEMA review and approval. And so we want to aggressively pursue that approval so that we're both on the regulatory side looking okay, but also that we're opening that grant door a little bit more as we move forward.
Thank you.
Again, we have specific tanks of recoding tank Reservoir 7. That's Reservoir 7 tank A and B, tank 4, and our bridal wood tank on our recycled water supply. The tank 7A and 7B are scheduled for construction this year, as well as tank 4. The bridal wood is a little bit more tricky because there's not a redundant tank on that recycled water side, so that's staged between 2 years, and that'll be in 26 and 27. Continuing on with the water storage tank, it doesn't end with just those 3 tanks, unfortunately, or tank sites. We do have another $9 million budgeted for moving forward, and those are the tanks identified there on the right as we continue with our rehabilitation plans. Service line replacement, again, I think we were topped out at about 29,000, so we are making headway on this on this. We've been, I know, under a little bit of a gun for supply issues. And then again, unfortunately, just for budgetary constraints, we have reduced that number on the current CIP from, I think, 3 million last year to almost half of that, about 1.55 moving forward. And then I think this last one is Strolling Hills pipeline improvements. We're estimating 6 million for the last 2 miles of that 20-inch force main. And I know this came up as some questions on if we are adding capacity for this. We're really not. We're really coming up to our existing capacity of the mother lode force main, which is the head of this in Diamonds or in El Dorado, down in El Dorado. And then the additional force main upgrades that we have performed for the mother lode force main. So this will give us an end-to-end project, help reduce some of the emergency storage that we have there in El Dorado, and then on occasions where we've also had emergency hauling. So we're also hoping to minimize those costs moving forward. One other benefit that we should point out is that this will be a parallel system, so the existing pipeline will stay in service. It's got residential connections there in Cameron Estates. So we're pulling off that trunk main, which also has the potential to save us some headaches in the future. Again, just as kind of a roadmap of how we got to here. We did have about 67 million in requested program expenditures that were deferred as part of this CIP. Some of those kind of key deferments, again, are reduction in our service line replacements, deferments in our water storage tank, and water line replacements. Our Reservoir 1 water treatment plant improvements have been all extended off past the end of the CIP, the 5-year CIP. And then I don't believe we have any significant water or wastewater lift station replacements in here as well. Although on a positive note on that, we are getting some of our wastewater stations improved by developers as part of their plans. And I think one of those items are on the agenda later this morning. So just as a comparison, again, over the last 3 plans, we are basically dead even with our 24 to 28 plan with this current adjustment. We typically do estimate about 70 to 90% of that. So the numbers that our Director of Finance presented this morning, again, is 278 that we anticipate really spending, or that's kind of our spending goal out of that budget, which matches, again, the cost of service study that the board has previously adopted. Just kind of trending on where we have been and kind of what our current states are. So our historical average since 2008, we've been averaging about 41 million a year. The current trend is estimating a bump up in that to right around 56 million, which is really looks to be a little bit more stable since probably 2020, which is when we started construction of the Folsom Lake intake. So we're, again, as we really look at improving that critical infrastructure and kind of addressing some of our aging assets, that number has bumped up a little bit. So financing the proposed CIP, again, we're looking at a target of just under 280 million over 5 years. Some of our larger projects, we do try to maximize annual pay-as-you-go revenue where possible. We also look for opportunities to supplement that with offsets from our facility capacity charges or FCCs. And then most key, we are pursuing grants wherever possible. I should point out there's been a slight change on, I updated some of these numbers. So when Brian Deason was here a couple weeks ago, he outlined that we had 31 million in total grant funding that we were pursuing. And again, with this last, between those two flume projects, we think that we've roughly secured about 14 million out of that. So we have 17 million still outstanding. And I should also point out for George's sake that part of that awarded 14 million is 250,000 that we just received from California Fish and Wildlife for design of new boat launch facilities at Jenkinson Lake. So we're hoping that again, it's the same kind of a program where we can follow through with the design, and then we can reapproach that same program for CIP offsets moving forward on, improvements that otherwise we normally wouldn't prioritize.
These guys kidding me about my boat ramp. But while we're having construction on the dam, it would be feasible, if we got all that equipment and everything else up there, to get a grant from the state and put a righteous boat ramp in.
That's, again, we will pursue that at every opportunity. So with that, again, we are recommending that the board adopt the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan. Again, subject to available funding. And again, our recommendation is option.
Move on.
I'll second with a comment.
All right, go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. It seems like every year when we do our capital improvement plan, it's kind of like driving through Wyoming. You get
not
over
that
one
boring.
hill and you think, well, okay, now things are going to smooth out, and there's another big hill that you come to down the road. And I think that's what we've got here, is I keep looking forward to the time when we can come over the hill, crest, and then start reducing our capital expenditures. But things keep coming up because of that big wave that we push forward, the 70 million that we're going to defer today of projects that need to be done that we're going to push out to the next hill in Wyoming. So it'll be nice one day to catch up. And I think the grant funding is one way to help kind of reduce those bumps in the road a little bit, and hats off to the staff for pursuing those grants relentlessly.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Brian, Lori, any comment?
Well, I don't want to, I have to put my mic on, thank you. I don't want to, repeat what Director Dwyer said, but I think the more we pursue grants, the better off we're going to be, and the managing of them and the following through. And it's obvious that a concerted effort is going to be put there. But deferred maintenance is the hardest thing any public agency has to go through, because the funding mechanism, in our case, we are based on rates, and not just taxes, property tax, but we're based on rates. And I enjoy the fact, I really appreciate the fact that more people are going on tours to check our assets out, to see what we need to have done, because then they have a better appreciation. But, it's like the Golden Gate Bridge. That has to be painted every year, and it takes 2 years to go from one end to the other, because the bridge, if it's not maintained, will fall through into the ocean. So in many ways, our assets are very, very precious, because it brings quality water to their homes. And I know it's hard when I hear my neighbors and friends who are ratepayers say that, why are my water bills so high? And then I have to sit down and talk to them. But I also refer them to these tours, which are educational and informative. But I just managed to tell them, go ahead, build an irrigation system in the back of your yard. And give me an idea how well that holds together without any maintenance. So it's the same thing. Farmers understand that. And I think it's really important that we bring this forward at all costs. And again, deferred maintenance is not an anomaly for any public agency. We just have to muddle through it. And with our complexity, we're not just a reservoir taking water from the Sierras going all the way to the Bay Area. Ours are different. And that's because of the age and because of the uniqueness of our geology. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to kind of follow up on that again, using your Golden Gate Bridge analysis. That's an easy one to see for people that are going to the Bay Area because you can see the flaky paint. Unfortunately, most of our infrastructure is the infrastructure you can't see.
Right.
So that makes it a little bit harder, and that's a great benefit of bringing the public to the tours and getting the public involved, is actually seeing the infrastructure you can see instead of the hidden pipes that are, you kind of magically make water appear or disappear from your house.
Show and tell works even in the classroom.
All right, is there any public comment on the adoption of the 2025, 26, wrong one, 2025, 2029 capital improvement plan? Yes? Yeah, and for the record, let us know who you are. We know who you are, but
Okay, my name is Son Hodson. Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. What about, you mentioned the grant of 17,
whoa, careful.
okay. So I had a couple of questions. One, you mentioned the grant of the $17 million. Is that the one that's referred to under item 3?
No, so pending applications we have for about 17 million. That the largest of that is we have a grant in for our reservoir, our floating reservoir covers. So that would be our Reservoir 1 and Pollock Pines covers, and I think that's a total of almost 15 million in itself. And then we have some additional applications out for, I believe it's called Advanced Assistance on our Flume 46 project. So that kind of gets us into that ballpark of 17 million of applications we have out, but we have not heard back on.
Okay. So then that one under number 3 is separate then? Sorry.
Under number,
The one to the California Department of Water Resources, is that do you know
Oh,
the amount of
consent
that
item
one?
3.
oh, okay. That is yet another one that's not included in those numbers. So again, as we are progressing on Silver Lake Dam, we're continuing to look at applications. So this is actually a smaller one that we're hoping to leverage as potentially a proper floor passes, which will open additional funding for California infrastructure, but also getting kind of the DWR a little bit more familiar with that project and the scope of that project so that we can continue to engage with them.
Okay, but what's the amount though? That's what I was asking.
Well, so that one is a total, I think, throughout the state of 40 million. So we are asking for the full project, actually, of 40 million. So we don't think that's very likely at this point. What we have done is we've staged that into the various phases of the project, and again, we're kind of using it as a engagement tool as well with state DWR. So if we get a total on that, it'd be at the state's
Share of that 40 million?
a share of that 40 million. Yes.
All right.
Yep.
So you don't want to be specific. Somebody else asked me about this. I was talking about Silver Lake Dam replacement. When you have to replace a dam, do you drain the lake? Or do you build a new dam behind the old one or blow up the old one? Or how do you get rid of it?
It'll be a kind of a coordinated phasing plan. So we've got some cofferdams that we will put in there to retain some of the water. It won't be the full capacity of what we would normally experience at Silver Lake, but it will retain some of that water. And that's, again, being ferreted out as we progress the design.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Do we have anybody online?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 5, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 5. Option 1 moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Have we been advising Amador County about all of these plans?
We have. I know that, again, John Kessler and I believe Brian Mueller were up there earlier this year for a workshop. I don't know the specifics of that, but we could report back. But we definitely have been doing a significant amount of outreach for the replacement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, we'll move to action item 6. Go ahead.
Good day, Board. Honorable President Day. Michael Sutter, I'm the O&M Supervisor of the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. Today I will be presenting on the Deer Creek Headwork Screen purchase. So summary of issues. Currently at the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, we operate a Duperon Flex Rake mechanical bar screen and associated washer compactor. Our existing screen has been in service continuously for the last 14 years. It's a single point of failure, so absolutely an Achilles heel, and is nearing the end of its useful life. So all of the wastewater, so all of the sewage that enters the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant passes through this screen. So over the last 14 years, the billions and billions and billions of gallons of sewage that we've processed have all flowed through this mechanical bar screen. It is currently partially submerged in raw sewage. It's at our headworks, so it's in a very corrosive environment exposed to collection system gases, hydrogen sulfide. So regardless of the amount of maintenance one performs, and our maintenance crew are highly focused on this piece of equipment, knowing that it's a single point of failure, there's still some wear and tear. And that's what we are experiencing right now. Actually, can you back 1 second, please? Thank you. Excuse me, we currently do not have a redundant mechanical screen. However, we can bypass to a manual screen. And when I say bypass to a manual screen, it's very much so a manual screen which requires an operator stationed there with a 10-foot rake, and they are physically pulling this debris out of a screen. Very fun. And of course, having a new screen on deck ready to swap into its place would significantly reduce downtime in the event of an equipment failure. Of course, currently the manufacturer Duperon advertises 18 to 26 weeks out for a replacement screen. These are not on-the-shelf items. They require fabrication and assembly, and they're in high demand. So we would be potentially looking at 6 months out of manually raking. So next slide, please. A little background, of course, influence screening at the headworks at all wastewater treatment plants is imperative. We remove rocks, rags, large debris. If you could think of it coming down the collection system, we have removed it. 4x4s, 2x4s, and all types of unsavory items that are looking to damage and harm downstream equipment. As stated, lack of screening significantly leads to increased O&M costs, disruptive issues, pumps clogging, lines clogging, pumps wearing out, overall just equipment damage. So it's absolutely imperative at the headworks to remove as much of this debris as possible so we don't incur any downstream issues. And to put things into perspective, there's over 72 yards of screen material removed annually. Slide, please. Yes, sir, that makes up the majority of them. Not that I'm sifting through there, but visually, yes, we can see. Here's a great aerial view of the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. On the right-hand side, the north side, you will see where our influent screening, our headworks is located. So all of the flow, all of the influent flow that enters our collection system, or enters the treatment plant, enters from that location right there. Next slide. Here's a photo of our existing mechanical bar screen in the background, and in the foreground, you will see that pit with our manual bar screen. Another view of the existing mechanical and manual bar screens. As you can see, the mechanical, it's stainless steel. It's verse for outdoor weather. However, in the case of an equipment failure, we would bypass to this pit, this manual bar screen, and I would require an operator stationed there, not full-time. If it's average dry weather flow, we could manage maybe 3-4 times a shift. If we enter wet weather when this were to happen, if we had an equipment failure, I would potentially need someone stationed there overnight. As you can see, this is just a bar screen, excuse me. If this bar screen packs with debris, it would essentially blind off. If it blinds off, it creates back pressure in the collection system, or even here, that chain link fence behind our existing mechanical bar screen back there is the perimeter gate. Our Deer Creek, at physical Deer Creek, is just right down a little hill. So potentially, if this thing was to blind off and fill up, it could overflow and end up into Deer Creek. So we have some ergonomic safety issues with individuals raking this. Of course, they would be tied off, but also there's some compliance issues downstream that could be incurred if we had a large storm. And while not a very, this photo provides insight into what the screening bin looks like. These are, as silly as it sounds, high quality screenings. They've been washed, they've been compacted, they're very dry. If an individual was forced to rake the screen, it stresses an already lean crew, but also we'd be putting this sloppy mess into this bin, which would ultimately incur more hauling costs. And I mentioned silly things that come down the collection system. In that pipe right there, there's a baseball. So just to provide some insight into the unusual items that flow down the sanitary sewer collection system. Yeah.
With these thank you. With these dehydrated compact things, could they be used for energy source, like in a burner, or?
You know
I've heard that other wastewater systems are doing that.
I think if there was someone clever enough to utilize these, they could. However, they are entrained with a lot of plastics.
Right.
And so it would just create more obnoxious
Fumes,
situation
yeah.
down the way. So could it happen? Potentially with some forward-thinking thought. I believe it. However, currently, I don't think we're equipped to make it happen. But I'm sure there's some
Right.
things on the horizon.
Okay,
Because
thank you.
as you mentioned, these do all end up in landfill.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay, thanks.
Okay, current funding between the mechanical bar screen as well as washer compactor, tax and shipping, the total funding request is $370,628.88. 3 board options. Option 1 is to award a contract to DuParent Corporation in the not-to-exceed amount of $370,628.88 for the purchase of a headwork screen and associated washer compactor, and to authorize funding of $370,628.88 for the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant, project number 24018.13. Recommended is option 1.
I'll move option 1.
Move one with a comment.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Director
second.
Osborne?
So-
Yeah.
Okay, all right. One of the things that has been bothering me for years is why one government agency is paying tax. This is $25,000 in tax. Why one government agency taxing another government agency makes no sense.
Your governor appreciates it, George.
Boy, does he.
All right, we had a motion and a second, and is there any, we need to get this going. We don't want that to fail, so.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
Yeah, can you pull that out for me?
Yeah, right.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Batter up.
If the public would like to address the board on action item number 6, please take a look at the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 6. Option 1 moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Osborne. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, get that order in.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Board. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to action item number 7.
Good morning, Honorable Board. I'm John Kessler with representing Engineering, the Hydro Division. And the item before you today is to consider a contract amendment to our design services for Silver Lake Dam replacement. Previous board action, September 2022, this was the largest approval of funds that really got us launched into the design scope for the entire project, approving a contract to GEI for almost $1.5 million, allowed us to perform the subsurface exploration, and we had a number of activities for Tabor drilling, 167,000. We had seismic refraction surveys, lab material testing, and this also gave us staff capitalized labor funds to work with, and also launched early parts of our environmental services efforts and project contingency. Total authorization of almost $2.8 million. October 2023, the CIP was approved for 2024 to 28. And in January of this year, the board authorized funding of $932,000 plus for our State Division of Safety Dams application fee. So when we make an application for a new dam, these are the fees that DSOD charges the district for administering and reviewing the project. They actually kind of perform some parallel design work and spend a lot of time with us in the field once we go into construction. So those fees are intended to cover those efforts. Summary of issue is, as we advance to 60% design, we've seen additional project components that are necessary and requiring additional detailed analysis and design. This has increased the complexity of the project and required a twofold increase in the number of engineered design drawings than originally estimated, and additional funds are needed for the additional analysis and design efforts to advance the project to 100% design. Current status, this really is a list of current accomplishments. We've conducted the exploration of the dam foundation and lake bed, cofferdam conditions. We've completed the geotechnical data report, which captured that exploration and performed, basically capsulized that all into a package that FERC and DSOD could review. We've been preparing the design criteria and supporting design report that gets updated with every level of design effort as well. Completed 30 and 60% design. We've now prepared the technical specifications, and we have a detailed project description which will help in the environmental review and permitting process. We've had numerous outreach efforts, including presentations to the Amador County Board of Supervisors, the Project 184 Ecological Resources Committee, the Forest Service, and we've also been posting project information on our website and responding to inquiries. Can I drive this time? Okay. Jen's going to let me navigate here with special permissions. If you look at the lower photo first, you can imagine yourself in Director Osborne's fishing boat looking from the lake downstream. You'd see to your left, you would see a primary low-level outlet, and to the center is a auxiliary outlet, which is a little bit larger, 48-inch and 60-inch. This is a spillway, which is a passive spillway for overflow. The dam under the current design is a concrete gravity structure, unlike the existing dam, which is an embankment and hybrid. So the new dam will be much less sensitive to seepage flows, as is in general embankment dams. So that's a plus. Also having the passive spillway where we don't have to operate radial spillway gates as we have now. We have something that can spill on its own. And then secondly, we have these 2 auxiliary outlets, which greatly increase our outlet capacity from about 75 CFS when the lake is full to about 800 CFS going forward.
John, well, those gates on the top, you said they'll spill on their own. Does it spill over the top, or do they actually open?
Over the top.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so really, they're just considered kind of a fixed weir and not a gated structure that you have to operate. You'll also see a bridge over the top of the dam, which will allow pedestrian access and allow our vehicle access and equipment when we're performing maintenance. On the top view, you'll see, now we're looking upstream from down, and you'll see the primary valve outlet building here on the right. This is one of the kind of expanded features from the original concept I'll talk about shortly. And anyway, and the spillway's been modified as well for future maintenance ease. So let's move on here. Do you want it back?
John, can you go back one?
Thank you for that.
John, can you go back one?
Sure.
Maybe, I think this is probably the best slide to use to show Don where the coffer dam might go.
Certainly. It's going to go, of course, in the lake bed, and there's a series of 3 coffer dams. The first would be installed in the February-March timeframe of the first year of construction. So if we look in the lower photo, we would be upstream of the dam and the gates at a point where the channel is narrow. The lake is at its lowest in that time of the year, as well as the inflows are lowest. And it's before the snow melt has normally begun. So that first coffer dam allows us to establish, basically have dry conditions to install a second coffer dam, which will be up closer to the dam and allows us to basically perform some demolition on the left side of the existing dam. So the spillway structure, the concrete in general will be coming out and creating a diversion channel, which will be part of the new low-level outlet there on the left.
Well, these coffer dams, they're temporary dams, but are they just earthen?
So the first one would likely be a rubber bladder, which we installed back when we replaced the low-level outlet gates. And those are pretty quick and easy. The second and third is likely going to be the sacks of rocks like you get at Home Depot, and basically making a structure out of those and then putting an impermeable liner over that. And that seems to work better for that kind of longer-term application, so.
John,
Yes.
just for Dawn's information, when we drained Caples Lake, I can't remember the exact acre feet we left behind the dam, but it was substantial. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it was in the 4,000 or 5,000 acre feet, mainly for fish, to keep the fish alive. And can you remember how much, what that was?
You know, I wasn't with the district at that time, Director Osborne, so I wasn't involved in that project in detail. I'm looking around to see if.
It's not that important. There will be water left behind the coffer dam okay.
Yes, yeah, that's our intent. We are looking at the effects of the evaporation on the lake over the summer season, which in this year were particularly significant. We're looking at the effects of water continuing to drain through and into Oyster Creek along that rim, the north rim of the lake. So all those, as well as maintaining the in-stream flows. So all those are going to contribute to basically a lowering of the lake over the course of the summer season as the natural inflows drop off. But we're going to do our best to look at how we can best manage those resources. One of the primary factors leading to this contract amendment is responding to DSOD's comments at 30% design They were quite extensive, and we expect they'll be the same with the 60% design package they're about to receive. Some of the comments, for example, got into the foundation prep and requiring a zoned embankment at the abutments. It's kind of hard to tell here, but the left image is a plan view, and the lake would be to your right and downstream to your left. Can you let me navigate again? Okay. So anyway, what it shows and what the image to the right shows is that basically you have a soil contact and you need a filter drain, much like we did with Forebay. So there's a sand layer, a gravel filter, which the sand layer prevents soil particles from migrating, and the gravel layer basically is the main drainage feature that exits the water from that embankment. We're not expecting really much water there because we're going to have a dam that's seated on the very highly competent bedrock is what we found from our subsurface exploration. And then we also have this cutoff wall, which on the left photo is that wall that kind of goes up and then to the right. And that's going to extend about 200 feet. And we expect that, and that'll also go down to contact with bedrock. And so we feel like this is somewhat of a redundant feature, but it's how we had to respond to DOCD to satisfy them. There is potential, but we think it's pretty low. And we feel that we're going to very well satisfy that concern with this addition. Next, please. Another factor is in the low-level outlet building. You can see a side view on the left image, the intake structure and a gated operating platform up on top by the crest of the dam. And then you'll see in the side view there's basically the 48-inch outlet. What you can't see, but you can appreciate on the right photo, though, is that 48-inch bifurcates where the 48 continues kind of to the near right, and a 24 is the other leg of that bifurcation. And so what that does is it gives us, our primary in-stream flows are really low, and so it gives us really accurate control of those low-level flows. And the 48-inch gives us more of kind of an intermediate range of flow release control. And then remember, we have that auxiliary outlet, which gives us kind of the bigger event flow release if we need it, and of course spill capability. So in basically fitting all this into the building, we found we needed a bigger building. And it wasn't something that could be satisfied with a prefab building. We had to build it, basically construct it in place. So we're planning to have a concrete batch plant so we can easily have the materials to construct this building in full height that'll be basically formed and poured on site. Next, please. With regard to the auxiliary outlet, this had to fit within the spillway approach, and so we had to basically enclose it within a wet well and also provide a housing for it for basically holding the or basically housing the operators for the two outlet gates. If you look at the photo on the left, you see what looks like two operators. One is an isolation, the other is the regulating gate. And again, this is a 60-inch outlet. And this wet well is kind of an additional feature that wasn't entirely foreseen at the original time of plan of the project. The spillway design has been modified from a stair step to a sloping chute, and we really believe this is going to help lead to lower long-term maintenance costs. The concern with the stair step was, or the purpose of that being an early design was, we needed that for energy dissipation to basically slow the water down as it enters the riverbed. That's not the case through modeling that's been done by our designer. And the stair step effect is something that we felt could be a greater public safety attraction, but also it's, in terms of maintenance, it's an issue where water doesn't readily drain off, and that freeze-thaw action can lead to concrete spalling and basically more year-to-year work that we have to perform to maintain it. The sloping face is something we think is going to give us, readily removal of water so that basically ice doesn't have a chance to build and cause that deterioration. We're also extending the right training wall, which in this photo would be to the left. That right reference is in looking downstream as if you're standing on the dam. Anyway, the flow from the dam makes a slight bend to the left, and that training wall will help guide that and avoid erosion of that embankment. This is what another dam's labyrinth looks like when it's flowing just a limited flow, but as you can see, Director Day, it's flowing, just a pour-over arrangement, and there's no need for anyone to get out there and do anything, except when debris might build up and you need to remove a restriction. And that provision of a bridge that we have built into our design will allow us to get equipment on the dam and basically break up ice if that's an issue, or remove timber debris should that occur. We also will have a log boom upstream, which will help sweep a lot of that off the lake as well. Another factor is, did you go back or forward? Okay, yeah, this is right. Thank you. We've also added some inspection and maintenance access features. You can see the stairway on the lower right to get down to the river level in the base of the spillway. And there's also a ladder, which is more difficult to see, that allows us to get to the upper platform level of the spillway, the flat section that goes up and over the wall just by the left, far left corner of the outlet building roof. You can barely see that going over the wall. We've also added some thought hard about the public security measures we need. We're looking at not only guardrails and handrails on both sides of the bridge and the dam crest, but also fencing on the downstream side where there's a greater fall hazard, and looking at how we're going to approach the project with being able to monitor with security cameras and so on, which will help our operation as well with being able to look at changing conditions. Some other primary factors, we anticipate additional comments from DSCD as well as from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and Caltrans that could influence our design efforts. We're providing for 6 additional months of project coordination during the design phase, developing an environmental permitting strategy and schedule, supporting the district in preparation of new grant applications. We did receive GEI support with one that was for the U.S. Department of Energy's 2023 solicitation, maintaining and enhancing hydroelectricity incentives. And that application was denied because we had not yet received FERC approval. And we are hoping that going into it, the fact that FERC was engaged in our project and we could demonstrate that they were supporting our direction and so on, and we had a timeline for completing the project, that was going to satisfy the grant requirements, but it did not. So we are looking, this is a grant program that sometimes repeats in subsequent years, and so we're looking to, we're monitoring that. Mike Haggerty, our grant specialist, is helping us in that effort. And so we're looking for another opportunity, a kind of revival of this grant program. And as you saw on the agenda earlier today, the consent item, we're preparing a grant application to the Department of Water Resources for this very same project. So our existing project funding is just almost $4.2 million. We're asking for a contract amendment of $424,720, which will bring us to just over $4.6 million of total project funding. Our board options, option 1, approve a contract amendment to GEI Consultants in the amount of $424,720 for design, environmental, and grant application support services, and authorize additional funding of the same for the Silver Lake Dam Replacement Project number 19031. Option 2, take other action. our recommendation is option one.
Move one.
I'll second.
I'm taking the first tier and the second there.
And John, have we been in contact with, in the old days when we had fire briefing, we called it the Carpet Buzzard Patrol, otherwise known as the Fish and Wildlife. But anyway, have we been in contact with them about their endeavors?
So we have this California Department of Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and I believe they're aware of our project, and we've had some early contacts, but our process is not, in terms of beginning the CEQA and NEPA formality stage, that has not yet begun.
Okay, thank you.
And I know you're also interested in the California Division of Boating and Waterways grant for a new boat ramp. And we're also, we haven't forgotten
I
about that.
appreciate that.
And that's on our, within our plans as well.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on action item number 7?
Don Hodson, back again. And I just had one question. Do you have any idea when you may actually start construction?
We need to be very careful about a question and answer. So can you direct your question to the board president? And the board president can let John know whether or not he can answer or if he's prepared to answer.
Yeah, if you can give a short answer, that'd be great.
Tentatively, we're looking at beginning construction in 2027, and the project may carry over to early in 2028. That schedule is still subject to many factors, the permitting, the funding, and so on, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anybody online?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 7. Option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Camp. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
All right, action item number 8.
Well, good morning. Mike Brink, Supervisor of Development Services. Here today to have you consider approving an agreement for the completion of public facility improvements for the Stonebriar Lift Station Improvements Project in the estimated amount of $377,250. Summary of the issue, wastewater flows from the Folsom Heights project will gravity flow to the district's existing Stonebriar Lift Station. The developer, Elliott Homes, is responsible for making capacity improvements to Stonebriar. Those improvements will also benefit existing customers by replacing existing equipment. And we're proposing to have an agreement with Elliott Homes to reimburse them for a portion of their cost using FCC credits. Next slide. A little background, as you recall, the Folsom Heights project is a planned community, about 530 lots in Sacramento County. That was annexed into our service area back in the late 70s. Wastewater from about 400 of the 530 lots will gravity flow to the existing Stonebriar Lift Station. Stonebriar Lift Station was constructed back in 2001 and currently serves about 578 residential lots. But the lift station does not have capacity to serve Folsom Heights, so they're responsible to make, at their cost, capacity improvements. Next slide. Here's an exhibit I think you've seen before of Folsom Heights. The coloring coding is just different type of housing. Highway 50 is up at the top, above the number 3. The 3 numbers are their phasing plans, with phase 1 hoping to start this year. Down the very lower right-hand corner of the flag is White Rock Road, and Stonebriar Lift Station is kind of located right where to the right in the county, El Dorado County, about where the flag starts. Next slide. Move back to sport background. Stonebriar is 23 years old. At some point, it'll need condition-based improvements, which aren't currently in our CIP or any future planned CIP. Capacity improvements will be constructed by Elliott Homes. which include some replacement of some existing equipment that is nearing its end of its useful life. And those costs should be paid for by existing ratepayers. We're going to benefit by this project by replacing equipment that is reaching the end of its life. And again, we propose to reimburse Elliott for a portion of their cost using wastewater FCC credits. Here's a picture of the existing lift station, kind of looking south of the building. You see houses existing electrical gear and a generator. To the left, behind the bollards, is a wet well and some underground piping. Next slide. This picture on the left shows the wet well there with above ground, that's surface mounted electrical equipment there, actually, to pose a tripping hazard. And below that is some underground piping, which we currently put above ground new equipment, new projects. Looking to the right is the existing switch gear in the building and the existing generator. As I'll show on a future slide, we propose to install the new generator outside the building, which will make room for new electrical gear while this existing electrical gear is kept operational during construction. Next slide. Elliott, the developer, has retained TNS Construction to construct the Stonebriar Lift Station project that we're working for Elliott. The improvements include new electrical service, a new generator, new electrical gear, a new wet well, new manholes, new pumps, piping, paving, and other items. The total cost of construction that they've awarded to TNS is $4.31 billion. Next slide. This may be hard to see, but this is one of the drawings from the approved design set. I don't know if you can see the red writing I put there on the slides, but upper left-hand corner is the proposed new generator located outside the building. As I mentioned, that'll make space for new electrical gear to go inside the existing buildings. Below that, a new above-ground piping. Our old lift station designs had check valves and valving in a vault, which pose an access hazard for confined space and just ergonomics getting into that vault. So as part of this project, as part of all new lift stations we do, that piping will be above ground as part of this project. They will install a new wet well, lower left-hand corner. That wet well will have a current fall protection and have higher capacity for the additional flows from Folsom Heights. Upper middle and lower middle, there's two new manholes that will be installed over the existing piping entering the lift station. Those are needed so they can divert flows around the existing wet well during construction. It also allows them us in the future to divert flows to what is existing wet well, which we convert to emergency storage. So in the event of a need to work in the new wet well, replace pumps, we can divert flows to the old wet well, which would be emergency storage, goes there by gravity, and we can pump from that. Again, giving us access to easier maintenance in the future. And then within the existing electrical building, generator will be removed, temporary generator installed on site, and new panels put in there to replace the existing. And then lower right-hand corner, as I mentioned, next slide, a new PG&E service we brought into the site to power the higher horsepower pumps. Next slide. So the district will benefit by replacing aging equipment and correcting some existing deficiencies that are part of the overall lift station project constructed by Elliott. The existing PG&E service is actually undersized for the existing pumps that are there. It's working fine, but they will need to bring existing PG&E service to the site, and we acknowledge that we're going to benefit from that. And we propose to reimburse them 10% of their costs associated with that line item in their bid schedule. The existing generator can only power one pump, one of the existing pumps at one time. This is very problematic in the event of a storm event, is when you need to have both pumps going. So right now, the existing generator can only power one pump during a backup condition. And we're proposing to reimburse them 25% of their cost to provide a new generator at this site. They'll install a new large wet well and with a new vault lid, which will have fall protection. That's a big safety improvement for our staff. They'll install a new dedicated vector tube in the new wet well. So a vector tube is used by our big suction equipment during maintenance or emergency operations. And the vector tube being dedicated in the wet well means our crews won't have to, one, take the time to assemble 5-foot sticks of tubing to get in the wet well. But equally important is it also prevents ergonomic issues. Those tubes are heavy, especially as you start stacking them up. So with a dedicated vector tube in the wet well, we'll eliminate that issue. As I mentioned, we'll convert the existing wet well to emergency storage. A big benefit to us as district and ratepayers. We are proposing to reimburse them 100% of the cost that's not needed for their project. And also, we'll get new electrical panels and pumps at reimbursement at 10% of the cost. Next slide. District's estimated total cost of the project is $370,250, so just 9% of the total $4.3 million cost that Elliott's paying for this project, and great benefit to us and the existing ratepayers. Another key component here is all soft costs, which are design and management, construction management, design, inspection, are not eligible for reimbursement. So if we had a future project solely on EAD, we'd be paying for the design costs, construction management. In addition, Elliott's going to reimburse us for our staff time to inspect the project. So again, great benefit to the district. No funding is required today. As I mentioned, Elliott, the developer, being reimbursed in the form of FCC credits for the portions benefiting existing customers. There's approximately 400 new sewer connections will hopefully build out, will be connected to our system. Based on the current recently board adopted FCCs, that has a value of about $5.5 million of FCCs. And to pay for that $377,000, approximately 28 of those 400 FCCs will be paid for by credits. So no funding required today, just offsetting some FCCs towards the credits. Board options. Option 1, approve an agreement for the completion of public facility improvements for the Stonebriar Lift Station Improvement Project in the estimated amount of $377,250. EID project number 3992 DEV. Option 2, take other action.
Any
We
board
recommend
questions?
option
Lori?
1.
Lori?
Yes, I'm kind of trying to figure out these numbers because it looks like a shell game to me. It's not that I doubt it's a good one. It's just that I'm trying to figure out when you say the FCC value is 5.5, but the value of doing the upgrades is 4 point something, right?
Well, yeah, their cost to do the improvements. Again, they're building improvements, so most or all new development pays their share for their growth. So they need the existing lift station does not have capacity to serve any of their needs.
I understand that. That isn't the question I asked. Elliott needs this from us because we are the service vendor.
Correct.
Their cost is going to be 4 point something.
4.31.
But then down here at this last page, number 12, it says that we would give them the FCC credits, correct?
Correct. The amount of-
Okay, so maybe what I am confused about the anticipation is we're going to be getting 400 new FCC people. No?
We're getting 400 new customers.
So they're
New
going to
ratepayers.
we're going to get 300, when you look at the FCC costs, okay, we're going to be getting,
372.
right.
Correct.
And the cost of that whole thing is 5.5 million we'll be receiving?
No, those are FCC credits completely separate from their project. They're paying $4.3 million to build the project at their cost. And getting reimbursed for about $377,000. In addition to that, we'll get FCC, they'll be paying FCCs for water and sewer connections.
372 units.
Right.
72 units, which will amount,
Yeah, I'm just trying,
Well,
okay.
they-
It's just the wording, I
No,
think,
no, I know.
maybe.
The 5.5 million in FCCs is completely separate from Elliott's cost of 4.3 million. So that 5.5 million is to cover all kinds of things that the new customers will require, they're buying into the system. So yeah, I know it seems like they're conflated, but they're not, they're separate.
I guess it's the.
so Elliott will be paying EID FCCs. So if it wasn't for this project and reimbursement, they'd be paying us $5.5 million.
Okay, so it actually, maybe it's the wording that's confusing to me, because it really doesn't say Elliott. You know, I know they're gonna be reimbursing on the very second, but anticipation, and I'm just trying to put all those figures together, and it was, maybe there was a way it was said differently, I don't know. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brian? No. Pat, did you have anything? Okay, is there any public comment on action item number 8?
Where did I miss a first and a second?
Oh, yeah. We need a motion and a second, please.
a motion to.
Okay,
I'll second.
you're not the only one that's confused, so. We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 8, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 8. Option 1 moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Dwyer. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Aye. Thank you, Mike. All right. Well, action item number 9, our general warrant registers. Pay our
Move one.
bills. We have a motion. Second. And a second. Is there any public comment on? Yes.
Director Bearcamp will be recusing himself on this item.
All right, Director Bearcamp will be recusing himself. Is there any public comment on action item number 9, our general warrant registers?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions in today's agenda. President Day, it doesn't appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 9, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer, with Director Veerkamp recusing himself. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please vote.
Division 1, 2, 4, and 5 voting aye. Motion carries.
All right, thank you. We'll be going into closed session. We'll be pausing today's meeting. Counselor, do we have a time estimate?
Thanks, President Day. The board will be meeting in closed session to discuss the matters that have been agendized as closed sessions A and B, and I anticipate that the board's discussion of these matters will require at least 45 minutes.
I agree. So we will return no sooner than a quarter after, no, 25 after. And it could well be longer than that. Thank you.
This Zoom meeting will be temporarily shut down until the board reconvenes after closed session.
All right, we are back from closed session at 12:20. Counselor, do we have a report?
Yes, thank you, President Day. To report out of closed session, as it relates to closed session item A, the board met and conferred with its labor negotiators. It provided direction but took no reportable action. With respect to closed session item B, on a motion by Director Veerkamp, seconded by Director Dwyer, the board unanimously instructed district staff to deny the October 3rd, 2024 claim from Richard Lewis, and instructed staff to defend the district if the claim ripens into a lawsuit. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Do we have any assignments?
None today.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned at 12:22.
Thank you.